The harmonic vocabulary used in voice leading encompasses all of the triads, seventh chords, and their inversions that we've discussed so far. In our earliest efforts, though, we'll focus our attention on triads. For now, in this video, we'll set aside inversions of triads and discuss how we can move between chords using only root position triads. Note that when we identify chords going forward, we'll usually refer to them by their Roman numeral representations. This gives us a way to discuss principles in general terms and apply them to specific keys as needed. Unless otherwise stated, these generalities apply whether we are operating in major keys or minor keys. You may find it helpful to review the qualities of diatonic triads, as we'll now start to assume that we've mastered that particular bit of information. As we'll see down the road when we explore the concept of functional harmony, there is a certain kind of aural logic to the order in which chords appear. For now, we'll just start with some basic motions that rely on that rationale that we'll delve into later on. It's standard practice to begin and end chord progressions with a root position 1 chord. It's also generally expected that the final 1 chord will be immediately preceded by a 5 chord. Note that this 5 chord will need to be a major triad even in minor keys, where a minor triad is possible, but just not typical for the penultimate chord. Starting with a 1 and ending with a 1 and preceding that last one with a 5 is about as basic as it gets, and so therefore a 1-5-1 progression is perhaps the simplest type. However, it is also common for the chord just before that 5 chord to be either a 2 chord or a 4 chord. Now, for root position only writing, we'll ignore the 2 chord in minor keys because of its diminished quality. As a rule, we prefer to write diminished chords in first inversion, so we will revisit 2 chords in minor keys when we expand our voice leading conversation to include inversions. So with all this in mind, here are a couple of very typical examples of shorter chord progressions. As for 3 chords and 6 chords, if either of these appear, they'll usually be part of a more extensive chord progression, appearing after the initial 1, but before the end grouping of 2-5-1 or 4-5-1. If both 3 and 6 chords appear, 3 will generally appear before 6. So here are examples of progressions that are still quite short but are expanded somewhat to make room for 3 and or 6 chords. Now, the only Roman numeral we haven't mentioned yet is the 7 chord. The reason for this is because of its diminished quality. Remember, chords based on the 7th scale degree are always diminished in major keys and usually are diminished in minor keys. So for the same reason that we're ignoring 2 chords in minor keys for now, we'll also ignore 7 chords. We tend to avoid writing diminished chords in root position. Also, let me just clarify that for our purposes, we will avoid repeating the same chord consecutively, especially since we're just working with root position triads. Every new chord will feature a change in Roman numeral.